Today on Gamer's Couch,
Sentinels of the Multiverse.
welcome! Hello! Today we got a very, very special episode of the Gamer's Couch for you. Not one, but two, because we can. And we couldn't decide on how to otherwise talk about that game and the most recent acquired expansion. So, if you happen to know that game, you might want to skip forward to the likes and dislikes section and then come in for the second video, which will be published later today about the expansion. If you're a total newbie, stay with this one and then go forward to the next video if you feel like either we are funny, we're totally incognito superheroes of some kind, or you're just interested in this game and like us to tell you all about it. So that's the plan. Ta-da! Lot of work to do.
What?
I'm a superhero! I have to be in care. No? Okay. I'm not a superhero.
I know, but that gesture,
That was my expression of Superman, you know, the superhero I don't like.
Because that's what Superman does all the time.
Every morning in front of the mirror. That's what I imagine him to do. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry as well. I'm probably more sorry than you are. And I'm sorry for you guys.
Come on. This is how it goes. You gotta deal with it, right? So anyways, if you're new to the channel or to these kinds of videos, we're talking about a board game every Sunday, and we start by him explaining the rules and gameplay. By the way, if you don't know us, I'm Sarah, the artist behind Pinselgeschichten, and that is my husband
of Sarah. I don't have a real name. I'm just husband of Sarah. It's what will be written on in our gravestones once we both die. So here lies the artist Sarah, here lies husband of Sarah.
That reminds me of our honeymoon trip in the Boston hotel. But that's a story for another day. Anyways, we're then following up the explanation part with talking about what we liked and disliked about the game before we tell you about any funny stories or any kind of experiences that we had with whatever game we have on the couch. And today it's Sentinels of the Multiverse, as you already said.
And we have a lot of experience with that because you probably have heard us mention this game in, well, if you don't, go watch all the other videos and then come back.
Are you back?
Or stay with us and just go along with us. We've been referring to this game or talking about this game in a multitude of capacities. It is mostly mentioned whenever a co-op game comes up or something with some interesting mechanics. So I'd say let's get started.
Yeah, go. I'm sipping coffee, looking nice, being quiet.
In case you're wondering why we bring that out now, well, there's actually two reasons for that. One will be the other video, the newest expansion that we want to talk about, and also because there's, at the time of filming this, some superheroes apparently on the big screen get beaten up by a robot dude, and this kind of is a pretty good game if you want to have being beat up by a robot dude at home. Without actually being beat up. You just... What is it this time?
I said I'm quiet. I'm not gonna. It's just... So many pictures in my head.
Sentinels of the Multiverse is a, as I said, co-op game that mostly works with decks of cards. You will be one of the superheroes available, and each superhero, as you can see, or the Sentinels, has his own unique deck of cards that you will be drawing stuff from and using their abilities in order to combat a villain. Now there's different villains available as well, and that is already the first kind of big appeal of this game. There's well, not quite infinite, but there's a very big amount of variety just in terms of who's playing what Sentinel and which villain are you playing against. given that the turn order always remains the same within one game, it is actually also kind of well, important, or at least makes a difference in which turn order your heroes are going to play. And right away, I can really, really strongly just recommend try to keep things random, because that's one of the spoiler bigger draws of the game. But let's talk about how to play the game. Now, if you're looking at the very, very thick manual, it actually comes with this is how you play the game. And this page, I know there's a lot of manuals that kind of give out a reference page that show you how it's done, and here's a very short thing. This thing actually covers pretty much everything you need to know. First, there's a villain turn, in which you start the turn and do everything that the villain card tells you to do. And obviously that is different from villain to villain. And I will bring up a couple just to give you an example of that. Then you'll play a new card from the stack of villain cards, and then the turn ends. And these start of turn, end of turn terms are always referred to on the cards. So there may be a card out there that says, and the end of the turn, deal damage to the heroes, and so on. Then the hero turn starts, and that always goes in the same order. So you start with one of the Sentinels, and he's also doing very similar things. He has a start of turn, plays a card, then is able to use the power, and we see more of that once we take a look at the deck of a Sentinel. Then he gets to draw a card, or if he did not play a power and did not use a power or play a card, he gets to draw 2 cards, kind of to mitigate if you are out of options to do stuff. And then it's the next hero's turn. And finally, before it's again the turn of the villain, there's an environment turn, because this is not only about being a hero fighting a villain in some abstract kind of space. No, there's actually some environments that you also kind of influence both sides. I don't want to say right out it's more negative for the heroes, but the environments just introduce neutral complications to the struggle between those two parties. And that's it. The game almost in everything it does scales automatically just based on the number of heroes you're playing with. You can technically play this alone. It's not as fun, I'd say, but you can. It's certainly possible. You can play it with, I think, up to 5. It was. Let me check how prepared I am.
5 or 6, because we played it at the gaming weekend.
No, actually, it's probably under one of the boxes that are in front of us.
You talk,
that are filled
I
with
check.
6 tons of
you can
cards.
build a house with those.
Because we already have a couple of the expansions in here, and that typically results in boxes that
2 to 5 players.
that look like these.
And they're heavy.
But let's get back to, well, the things you'll be dealing with. And let's start with the heroes, because they are a little bit more easy to grasp than the villain. So let's say you picked Bunker. And by the way, all the hero... What? What's now?
Was very German English, by the way.
By the way.
I'm sorry.
Bunker, or Bunker as the Englishman tries to call them, these are all original heroes. So you won't find your Marvel or DC guy in here, but they're sometimes kind of similar, and that is one of the appeals of this game as well, is always referencing actual comic books, or at least picking up tropes and genres that you'll find in other things. And yes, there's an expansion that just deals about messing with timelines to retcon events and introduces, well, different sides where some of these heroes might be villains and the other way around. But let's go back to the hero. So each deck of cards comes with 1 hero card, and that does look like a comic book cover. That at least gives you your base power. As I said, in your turn you're playing a card, then you'll get to use one of your powers, and you always have at least 1 base power that's on your base card. So that already kind of defines what the hero is all about. So Bunker's power in this case is draw a card. there might be, or there are also expansions or promo cards that give you different versions of that again try to alter the game in some way. And then you'll get a whole bunch of cards. You get to draw each one, at least one per turn, usually. And there's just different kinds of cards. The simplest one are so-called one-shots. You play them, do what it says, and then discard the card. There are ongoing cards and equipment cards, and I think there was some more like artifacts or something.
Ongoing limited and equipment limited. This with bunker.
Well, okay, in the base game, I think it's only ongoing equipment. These actually stay in front of you, and either, like this one, gives you a new power, so the maintenance unit is an equipment piece that says power bunker regains 2 hit points. So if you get that out, instead of using the power to draw a card, you may use this power to heal yourself. The ongoing cards, they're saying ongoing, and it depends heavily on the hero what they're doing. Some are like deal damage to each foe or to some specific target each turn. Bunker is all about being I don't want to call him Iron Man, but yeah, it's very, very close to that. It's actually more close to War Machine, but so Bunker has a mode that's called, or an ongoing card that's called a mode, and this one is called Turret Mode, which says when this card enters play, destroy all other mode cards. So this kind of ensures you only have Bunker in one or the other mode. There are more in here. And this says you cannot play or draw cards. You may use an additional power during your power phase. Increase damage dealt by Bunker by 1. At the start of your turn, you may destroy this card. What Bunker plays in a way where you bring out equipment and you can either be the tank of the group, and I'll come to the MMO terms in this because actually there's quite a lot of raid boss fighting in here. Or you may use something like this, which gives you additional power usage, so to speak. So if you have more equipment out, that gives you, other than healing, maybe something that allows you to deal damage. Let's say you have the Gatling gun, which is a limited equipment. As Sarah said, some cards are limited, meaning you may only have one of those in play. I mean, one Gatling gun. Well, you can never have enough Gatling guns, but usually one is enough. So the Gatling gun here says at the start of your turn, Bunker deals one target 2 projectile damage, and at the end of the turn, discard one card or destroy this card. So as you can already see, Bunker on the one hand has the power to draw new cards and to burn them to fuel other abilities that allow him to deal damage, or to, bunker up and be the tank and heal, or turtling all the time, maybe taking damage. One of the base concepts in this game is having targets and being able to deal damage to them. So Bunker's card actually has a little number on here that says 28. So this is his health, that whenever he gets reduced to 0, he will die, or at least be out of combat and have only a limited effect to do so. Villains and all other, or everything that has health is usually called a target, and you kind of win the game usually by defeating the villain by reducing his health to 0. But most of the time there's some caveats to that, where you have to fulfill other objectives to actually be able to damage the villain, or maybe you have to make sure that none of his minions are out protecting him. But that'll come once we talk about some of the villains. So Bunker is a good example for an easy to play hero, I'd say. He's fairly straightforward. You bring out equipment and you either choose to go the I'm going into dealing damage mode, or I'm going into healing myself mode. But he can't do everything at the full time. You kind of have to commit to one side and then go with it. Someone who's a little bit different than that would be Absolute Zero, who has a little bit more starting health. And by the way, when I said you're out of the game, what happens? You turn this over, and this gives you some more abilities each turn. So when it's your turn, you can't play cards, you can't do anything except for what's said on this card. So In Bunker's case, it says one player may play a card now, or select a hero, prevent the next 2 damage dealt to that hero. So these are all abilities that kind of support your other players and keep you in the game even though you might have been eliminated. Looking at Absolute Zero, he has a weird ability. This says power Absolute Zero deals himself 1 fire damage or 1 cold damage. It's like, huh? How does that make sense? Why would you deal yourself damage? It's you're on a 29 turn clock with that if you want it to be. Well, one of the things with Absolute Zero, as you may guess from the deal fire or cold damage, is he has a bunch of equipment cards that transmute one type of damage or one type of elemental stuff into another. So it could say whenever he deals himself cold or whenever he receives cold damage, he heals actually a couple of points of damage. Or whenever he gets hit by fire damage, he converts that to an ice beam and, well, attacks an enemy with that for a much higher version of that damage. So he's literally like a fridge, being able to transform or to use thermodynamics to attack people or to heal himself. He's also a crossover of Mr. Freeze and, again, a little bit, I don't want to say Iron Man, but if you take a look at the armor, it's not too far off. But he plays quite differently in terms of he's not committing to one side or the other. He's almost like the grass in the wind, trying to dodge one type of damage or convert one damage into another, kind of trying to take damage taken from the villain and shoot it back at him in some capacity. You also have utility characters, like, for example, Visionary. Visionary is the maybe Professor X of the set. She has telepathic abilities, and the manual actually explains all the backgrounds to these characters, which are quite interesting to read. And even if these are homages to existing characters, there's some very unique twists in here that are just cool to read up on and are enjoyable in and of itself. So Visionary's power, for example, is one player draws 2 cards, then discards 1 card. So this is all about card control and being able to get the stuff you need more quickly. There's other versions of her that let her look at the top deck of a card, and that may also be the environment or the villain deck, and decide if it stays in play or gets out of play. And has a bunch of abilities, some preventing damage, some, again, allowing people to draw more cards. As I said, more of a utility character by not dealing that much damage to specific targets, but able to mitigate really bad stuff that might happen to you by getting rid of cards that are in the way. So, as you already have seen, there's different roles that those heroes take. And obviously your play experience will be very different depending on what heroes are in play. And as I said, sometimes it's also important in which order you're playing. Because if Visionary comes before it's Bunker's turn, Visionary may allow Bunker to draw better cards. And then obviously give more opportunity to more potent moves to win the game. Another deck that's... where's our environment deck?
There. No, here. Like.
But these are not the cards. Oh, there.
So many cards.
Prepared.
Well, I set up. He just comes in like the royal king that he is, and
prepared. So
you're not Scar.
And another DMC takedown. Now, so after the heroes had their move, it's time for the environment deck. As I said, these are kind of neutral complications introduced to the overall game flow, depending on what environment you're picking. And they're all very thematic, so there's something like the Wagner, let's keep it Austrian as it is, the Wagner Mars base. Some others may be the Tomb of Anubis, or Atlantis, or Rook City, which is kind of Gotham City, but different. And these cards have also a variety of different things. Like this one says, oxygen leak, reduce all fire damage by 3. At the end of the environment turn, one player may discard one card to destroy this card. At the start of the environment turn, deal each target X toxic damage, where X is the number of cards in the environment trash. And you may see here it says deal each target, and there's some cards that only deal hero targets, some cards only deal damage to villain targets. Environments usually don't kind of distinguish and attack everybody, so they might help you out by getting rid of some of the villain minions or even the villain himself. But then there's some more complicated things like the self-destruct sequence, which has a wall of text on here. And as you can see, as easy to understand the manual is with that one pager, or the actual rules of the game reside kind of on the cards, where the self-destruct sequence can actually end your game and make you lose if you're not able to get rid of it. But there's also some targets in the environment deck themselves, like this villainous weaponry, which has itself 5 hit points and says increase damage dealt by villain targets by 1, which is kind of unfortunate for the heroes. So you want to kill this guy by dealing 5 damage to him to get rid of the effect that's going on. And a lot of this game is actually about not only dealing damage, but about the effects that are in place. There's a whole bunch of stuff that can happen, where effects reduce damage, increase damage, ignore damage at all, ignore damage of a certain elemental type, and so on and so on. There's even some that say you may not use a power this turn, or as long as this card is out. And to keep track of that, there's a whole bag of tokens to do that. It's also one of the reasons I'd like to call this accounting the game, because you have to keep track of a million different effects and things that are going on, which makes sometimes a bit more complicated. Last but not least, let's talk about villains. And while there's this prominent robot going on the big screen, let's take Omnitron as our first example. Omnitron is an AI, surprise, surprise, that has gone mad and decided to rid the world of every living, or at least the human beings. And villains are a little bit different from heroes in terms of it has a deck of cards that is actually quite similar to the heroes. But villains usually come with 2 cards, where one is the rules explanation card, and the other one is the villain card itself. So usually if you pick one of these, it has one side that says setup and gives you, well, the setup instructions to get things going. And this goes, at the start of the game, put Omnitron's villain character card in place, self-aware robotics factory side up. And that is this one. And as you can see, Omnitron has a staggering amount of hit points. It's 100. And then there's more gameplay rules and so on. In most cases, or pretty much I think in all the cases, for all the villains, or across all the expansions, everything we have, there are conditions on here that says at the start of turn or at the end of turn, if this or that is given, flip him over, and then you will do this. And there's more rules coming on and introducing more complications to the thing. And some of the villains only flip once and stay in this state. Some, like Omnitron, flip back and forth between the self-aware robotics factory and the rampaging robot, doing different things. In this case, whenever he's in factory mode, he will actually bring out more robots to fight the heroes. If he's in rampage mode, he will start dealing damage and destroy stuff. So you have to kind of anticipate what will he be doing next turn, and maybe keep your cards that prevent direct damage, or play the card that does an AoE damage next turn when he's bringing out more of his little robot helpers, and, well, decisions like that. Obviously, you're able to talk or give counsel to your friends you're playing with, if they're still your friends, while playing this. That might change if you lose too often. but that is how this is. Omnitron is actually quite easy in terms of well, complexity. As I said, he flips over, and that brings out more or less of his cards. Oh, by the way, each deck has its own back, so it's quite easy to find. The villain in this case also has an ongoing card available. Then he has target cards like this little drone device, and in order of play, you start with the villain, go through his start of turn rules, then go through each card that belongs to the villain and is in front of him, from the first plate to the last plate. Do all those effects, then you play a new villain card, do whatever that says. That might introduce even more cards, and there's some villains that kind of, oh, whoops, now you have 10 more enemies on the board that try to kill you. And last but not least, you have the end of turn. Again, you start with the villain and do his end of turn thing, and then you start with the first card that's out and going through all cards that are available. Some of the end of turn things might bring out new cards, and yes, they add, unfortunately, to the string of end of turn events. So there's a lot of, well, beasties that are really nasty for that, coming out with surprises that you don't want to see. Villains also have one-shot cards, so that the variety in card types is actually quite similar between heroes and villains. Villains are just better.
Bad heroes.
Yeah.
Anti-heroes.
Yeah, there's actually some bad heroes that are villains in this game, depending on the thing you're playing. Some reference to Terminator, and yeah. So there's also one other thing that you might want to consider whenever you're playing against a villain. He has a specific icon down here, and heroes also have a specific icon down here. If these two match, that means the hero and the villain are nemesis of each other, dealing more damage whenever they attack one another. So it's almost like comparable to comic storylines, where you have a specific villain that appears more often in one's character's comic line than others, and they can be considered a nemesis of each other, because that's what the kind of main story deals about with them. Then there's also, by the way, villains are rated in this manual. And this is, again, the one of the extended base game that lists not only the heroes and villains of this game, but also of the first, I think, 2 expansions. Yes. So with the base game and two big expansions, you have a lot of villains and heroes at your disposal. And each come with a rating. Heroes come with a complexity rating, and villains come with a difficulty rating. Although I wouldn't necessarily say it's difficulty, I would also say it's more a complexity kind of thing. Because the higher the rating, the more involved the rules tend to get. Yeah. Obviously, that makes it more difficult it's not as straightforward. You have to figure out actually how to beat the villain. And I'd almost recommend to you, if you play a villain the first time, don't read up on how it's beat. I enjoy that in video games, going against the boss and figuring out how to beat the boss. And this game pretty solidly simulates that in a board game fashion. Yeah, but as you can see, here's the icons are listed for each one and for the heroes. So who has whom as a villain is quite easy to figure out. For example, Citizen Dawn is here rated. Omnitron is rated as a difficulty 1 villain, and Citizen Dawn is rated as a difficulty 3 villain. Although she's a little bit lighter on the hit points, she has some nasty forms. Like she starts out as Citizen Dawn, the leader of the Citizens of the Sun. But if you hit her often enough, she gets pretty pissed and turns into the villain citizen merged with the power of the sun, and certainly becomes immune, unless you kill a bunch of her citizens. Or at least, well, I think it's actually the other way around. You have to have, yeah. So this says on on the Power of the Sun side, Citizen Dawn is immune to damage, which is kind of bad if you want to win the game. At the start of the villain turn, if there are amount of heroes -1 or more citizens in play, flip her back to the villain character card. And at the end of the villain turn, play the top card of the villain deck. In this form, she actually plays 2 cards and brings out a lot of her citizen minions, who are, to no one's surprise, also bad news. So there's someone like Citizen Blood, who says, at the end of the turn, this card deals hero with the lowest HP 1 melee damage. Which also gives you a good idea how targeting of heroes and so on happens. There's a lot of going on, like hit the one with the highest HP, hit the one with the lowest HP, hit the 3 guys with the highest HP, and resolving those effects that are going on. So it's always somehow random, but you kind of know what to expect fighting a game. And whenever you kill them, or as I said, for some villains you have to do special things, like all the minions have to be dead before you're able to kill them, or at all able to damage them. In Citizen Dawn's case, you must make sure that she flipped to the vulnerable side to beat her at all. There's cards or villains that take hostages that you might have to free. There's actually some mafia mob kind of boss that brings out sub-bosses that you have to beat. It's almost like playing Double Dragon or Streets of Rage as this kind of game. But I don't want to spoil too much for you on this. And I think this gives a pretty good grasp on how the game is played. As I said, it's for the individual player, it's not that difficult because all you have to worry about is your deck of cards, and these are not every card is different. Some are repeat cards, and once you play the character, you were probably interested in trying out other characters and giving them another try before settling down on a couple that you really like. Or you might grab a randomizer and just decide, well, this time I'm going to play this guy, or we're going into a very weird setup. And I think that leads us into the likes and dislikes.
What we liked and disliked. And now that he talked so much, it's my turn. So here are my thoughts, and I hope to have them somehow structured. Now I want to start with what I liked once we got the game and unpacked it. For one, the artwork is gorgeous. Fucking amazing artwork. This is like eye candy to me. Every single deck. Doesn't matter if it's a villain, if it's a hero or an environment, they're just gorgeous. So well drawn. And although you see differences in style, they're of a certain feel. So they somehow... they transport the feel of a multiverse pretty well. They're all somehow related, or you recognize things, but they're different enough. So that was awesome. Also, the quality of the components, it being the cards, the dividers for the box, or just the tokens to, well, count up the victory points, or health points, I should say, or any kinds of other markers. They're just lovely. Very well done. So that was a nice thing when you just open up the box. A second thing that I was really impressed with is the manual. And that is just, it's everything you need to know is in there on 2 pages. And you get a lot of stories for the heroes or any kind of character, which is totally awesome. So you get into the universe or multiverse at that point pretty easily. And it's just very consistent with the art style and the font and everything. It just fits. So it's really just eye candy, not even having played the game yet.
While you're talking about these things, just as a caveat, these are not part of the game, but there's an online site where you can print out high quality versions.
Yeah.
I will just show them to give you an idea, because these are way easier to see in terms of to see what the artwork looks like. But if you want them, you have to print them out on some like quality paper by yourself.
And remind
and it's
me
totally
to have
worth
the
it.
link. Send me the link to
Yeah, I
that
will.
site,
I
please. We'll have it in the description box. So I just really, really liked it. And it was so fast to get into the game and enjoy it from the moment you start the game. It's totally goofy if you have like other comic or superhero nerds with you on the table that play, and you just, well, you have the funny shit talking in regards to what the villain does, or really just fighting and all of that. So it's just a nice experience. What I found, well, I don't want to say difficult, but like, like that, is you as the hero will lose health points like that once you start the game. And it feels like you have no chance. The villain didn't even lose one health point yet, and I'm already halfway down. But what happens is once you go through your deck, you just get the cards that really enable you to fight the villains, so you actually have a chance. Though the first half of, well, I'd say the first 5 rounds, you feel like, this is just a waste of time. How am I supposed to beat them? I could actually stop playing now. Don't do that. By turn 6, all will be good. You will have a chance. You will have a blast playing this game. So I really, really like that. In terms of stories or character building, I was very, very happy with what they did with the heroes. Yes, they feel a bit like an homage to DC or Marvel characters, but they're unique and individual enough that you can actually hop into the role of the hero way easier. And there's sweet little fluff texts on the cards as well. And for example,
well, that's my favorite.
yeah, his favorite comes from Bunker. And they all have like a little speech bubble down there. And in the background here, you can see it all says Buddha, 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 Buddha. And down here, speech bubble, same thing. So it's just like Buddha, 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 which is totally hilarious to us and just adds to the experience of the game. So I really, really like it. I like that these are characters of their own, but you somehow recognize them. And there's even characters in here that I don't recognize from any comics, or where I need to think long and hard before I say, okay, there's some qualities of this and that character in a comic book.
But they kind of, you're missing the reference.
Yeah, or it's just like, there's so much characters of their own that they of course have qualities of like 5 heroes, but you can't say, like with Legacy, he's very much Captain America to me.
It's actually more Superman.
Yeah, but he's protecting the others, like with the Marvel. Superman is. I'm sorry, but
well,
that's
Legacy
not...
can. I think Legacy can fly, so Captain America cannot fly, and he doesn't have a cape.
In my universe, Superman does not exist. So he's Captain America referenced to me, especially with the star on the front. He has the same star than Captain America has, and anyways. So he's the protector, all of that. So he's very much like in the movie that just came out, and I see the reference there way more in your face, obvious, than, for example, with Raw. I love to play Raw, and with him, I have to think long and hard where the reference to the big 2 universes are. And that's totally cool. I love that. And I love to play, well, a character that is not plastered like on the card, or where I have to get into a role that I know for so many years now and that are so mainstream and well defined, but I can have like my niche hero and make him my own. So that's just a very cool feature of the game. Kind kind of disliking, but getting around it with these bigger cards here. The accounting, like you said, it's an accounting game, and you have to count a lot back and forth pretty much on any turn. But with those cards, you just get the wheel turning, and you only have to have the marker counter for the environment and the villain you're having in play, which is just way less back and forth of the tokens. And I mean, the accounting is not the hard part. It's just kind of like, yeah, I need a 1, I need a 5, and going back and forth, exchanging tokens. So that's a kind of a bit of like, sometimes. But since you don't have to do it with the heroes, when you have those bigger cards, that's a level where I say, oh, that's fine. I'm totally cool. I actually like it that way, that you have a bit of the blips going back and forth. But when you play with 5 players and you have to do that with 5 people, the villain and the environment, it's just, it drags out the game a tiny bit. And that's just like a meh. But you get around that with those bigger print yourself and have a lovely afternoon with a podcast gluing them together kind of thing.
And you can mitigate that a bit by using... There's an app.
There's an app, of course.
That allows you to keep track of a lot of the stuff. But still, that's...
It takes... I like this one more.
It is easier to parse, at least for me, to see if there's how much health is on there, on what, than when everybody is looking on a single tablet on the table. And again, that's just for score keeping.
Personal preference, but it's something that I don't dislike, but it's like, you know. But when you play
it's a lot of busy work.
Yeah, when you play a lot of Euro games where you have a lot of knickknacks and just tokens and blips and whatnot, you're kind of used to that. So it's fine. It's just when you play 7 rounds a night, which never happened, then you're at one point just like, back and forth with the blips. But all in all, it's a great game for me that I like to play a lot. And there's another thing too, it being co-op, there's certain games where I get more annoyed or frustrated when we don't win. No.
Oh, when we don't win. You were talking about yourself.
I get frustrated if we don't win with certain games. I'm more fine with that game. Yeah. Like last weekend we played the new expansion that we're gonna talk about in the next video. But spoiler.
Don't.
We might have not won every game, and it was totally fine by me. I was like, okay, I had a good time. I played my character. We fought really hard. It was like 1 point difference or whatnot. And I didn't mind. It was, I don't need to win with this game to enjoy it. Like, I can lose the whole night, and I will say at the end, I had a great night. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Your turn, then we can go into rating and talking about experiences.
Yeah, I'll have to agree. Although I have to say I'm kind of, maybe that's because I'm the guy who's usually more trying to keep track of the villain rules and what triggers when. To me, at times there's a point where it feels like you're spending more time, as I said, doing the accounting during the game than actually playing the game. That said, obviously it also depends on how often you're playing this, and if you're the only one who's keeping track of something, or if there are more players at the table who are doing that. So even if the first 2 or 3 games are a bit slow, it will get a lot better after that. And we had the fortune. Or the fortunate situation that the first time we played this with someone who actually played it before. So that sped up a lot of things and made it very enjoyable right out of the gate. I have to agree about the artwork. I'd say it's probably one of the biggest draws of the game anyway, and even the little details. If you get those You remember when we talked about the Alien Legendary game?
Mm.
No? Because you haven't seen it? Then go see it now.
Well,
Okay, you're back. So this is what card dividers can look like. And
how a box can feel, what it can look like.
And this is really, really nice. It's always very easy.
This is how you do it.
It's very easy to find the stuff that you're looking for. Everything is looking great. It's not some nondescript divider, but actually you can see who is where at which point and get the cool looking artwork on those as well.
Yeah, I mean it's all about you getting into character, kind of. You just don't. Well, other way.
So
you don't you don't play the game just for the mechanics. You play the hero. You play the story. So everything that can get you into that multiverse, goddamn, go for it. I mean, and the dividers help. It's the colors that might draw you in to play a certain character. Well done. I'm sorry I did interrupt you, but I'm just so agreeing with you.
So as someone said, it's a very thematic game.
I'm sorry. I love this game. I'm very excited about this one.
On the gameplay side, I think this is one of the best examples to show how a game that is very luck-based and random in terms of you never know which card you're getting, and you can be at a huge disadvantage. I wouldn't say that this game is totally unbalanced, but it is certainly not balanced for every or designed for every occasion, and that's totally fine. For once, it is probably very unlikely to balance it for every character combination, and I held up a couple of these. Some of those are promo versions on variants on characters who have just a different power amount or just different health thing. So I can totally understand to playtest this would be a nightmare, and it probably is still a nightmare to do that. But the thing that's so great about this is you go into a game and you can't really play around and say right out, oh, this time we're going to win. Obviously, you're trying to win, but there's no guarantee that you can win. Yes, you can meta game everything about this and say, okay, we need one character who can heal, one character who can deal a lot of damage against one target, one character who can deal a lot of or damage against a lot of small targets, and set up the thing and tremendously increase your chances at winning the game. But I think the interesting part about this is more playing with the randomness, and that leads up to very enjoyable moments where you feel like, man, this is really hard, but if you then pull off the win anyway, that feels really great. And the other thing I very much like about this is, I hinted at it earlier, it's almost like having a raid encounter, like a very scripted boss fighting event that is elaborate, where you have to do certain things. And I wouldn't go so far to say that each villain is its own game, but that's kind of the major draw of this. If yes, the heroes are actually a little more on the light side. There are some heroes that are more interesting to play in terms of gameplay mechanics, but the villains are the ones that usually introduce the big gameplay changes by having some really different approaches. As you've seen, even Omnitron, he's quite simple in terms of, okay, he turns around. So if you compare that to a boss fight in other games, that would be a very starter boss, and that's kind of reflected in the difficulty part there. And then there's other bosses who bring out equipment where you have to destroy the equipment first. And as I said, if you don't bring a character who can, or a hero who can destroy equipment, you might be at a very, very bad disadvantage. Sometimes the environment even helps you in ways you didn't expect, where the environment itself destroys ongoing cards, and that's what you have to do to progress. So there's no guaranteed win for every combination. But if you're like me, who likes a more tactical approach to a game where this is the deck of cards you're dealt, now do the best with what you have at every given turn without planning the big strategy up front. Obviously, you want to do this or that or get there and see what happens, but each turn is so different just by having so many different mobs and ads coming out that fight you that are all different, and your priorities will shift very rapidly during one turn, which makes it very enjoyable. Yeah, that's well, that one minor thing, and that kind of is comes with the overall idea of having so many rules on the cards themselves. Um, yes, the manual is quite easy to grasp, at least for the main gameplay loop, but this is one of the games where we had to look up a lot online for errata FAQs, because sometimes. So a friend of ours says the best approach to play this game is to just go with the simplest, assumed thing that the card tries to tell you and go with that. Which makes sense, but sometimes it is really ambiguous in terms of who is actually now targeted. I'm blanking on having a really solid example for that, but more than once we had that where we're not quite sure when does this happen, or most of the times it's actually more about timing things. It's like
each turn, each hero turn, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, there's some that was one of the bigger ones that are actually in the manual, but that is confusing because sometimes the card will say on each turn this and that happens, and then you look into the manual, and then the manual will tell you, well, there's 3 turns. There's the villain turn, the hero turn, and the environment turn. Unless you'll read a little bit closer and realize that each hero turn is a turn, kind of. So yeah, there's some things that might confuse you, and usually that is that link that we'll give you to how to print out your custom things has a really good FAQ errata that goes into pretty much everything across all the expansions and gives you a good idea. You don't really have to read that all up front, but it's a good resource to look up stuff whenever you're confused. So your rating?
On 1 to awesome, it's awesome. Solid 10 in my book. How about yours?
This is out of 10 Omnitrons. This is at 21.
Okay. Whatever. Okay, I know you like this game, so it's good. Talking about being confused.
But Omnitron went back in time, built more of him, and that's how he was able to have more...
Yeah, the joke is the greatest when you have to explain it. So...
Let me explain to you quickly what this is.
Segueing, funny stories and experiences. And there is one major thing that I remember, other than always having fun at the table. That was the one thing where we thought we had the villain actually so easily done, and
the one where we played together at first and just steamrolled the villain.
No, was the one
the
where
matriarch fight.
I don't know which villain it was, but the thing was that I played Ra, and
you always play Ra.
No. I have 4. I have 4 heroes that I like to play most, and Ra's one of them. So I played him, and we played with Styx and G, and we played, and there was this card that forced the villain to only deal fire damage, and then I had the card that said, as a power, I could make all of us heroes immune to fire damage till the next turn. And Styx was already like, oh, this is boring now. And we thought we had it in the back because it was the second try at that villain or whatever. But the thing is, no, don't ever expect that you win because you're just immune and can change damage of the villain dealing out to the heroes. Something happened, and I don't remember if it was the villain or the environment that said, you gotta destroy those cards. So hey, sucker, you get all the damage and you pretty much dead.
Research.
Yeah, it was like, And then it's like getting out of hibernation. It's like, oh my god, now we gotta fight and really try to win. And it was pretty close. I don't remember if we won or not, but it was that experience. Like, oh yeah, you think it's easy peasy? No. Something might be in one of those decks that says, haha, no, not gonna happen. So yeah.
Yeah, we had similar plays. The one actually I was talking about was where we played to, I think, with 4, and that's where we really steamrolled the. I think that was the matriarch, because it was like we played this and
we played her several times and got really.
It went over really quick, and we kind of were at, well, that's kind of boring.
Yeah. And then we played her again.
And it's like, oh my god, because I don't think we played something wrong, but
no, we drew nicely. The deck was shuffled to our luck.
She's one of the villains that can bring up a lot of little target creatures, and we were just insanely lucky on the first play that didn't happen. I assume.
Yeah.
But that just shows you how random this game can be, and taking that into account, and just. Well, thinking of this as a series of comics where sometimes the villains may win.
Yeah, and then there's the greatest story of them all that we already. I think we talked about that in one of the earlier vlogs where we played that game at the gaming weekend.
I don't think
with
so,
Mr. Fixer.
Because that's a very, very inside joke kind of thing.
No. We have that on one of the vlogs. I think it was us talking about getting back from Essen last year and then having the gaming weekend just to kind of recap. But it's
having Mr.
Mantis style.
Having Mr. Fixer enter Mantis style, and having one of our friends thinking that saying Mantis style, and
it's totally cool.
And that in a very almost kind of serious fashion, and everybody could say, "This looks so stupid. Don't do this ever again." And he was kind of.
It's a running gag.
But
now.
we thought it was very fun.
Yeah, they liked the game too. Yeah. It was first time playing the game with that crowd, so it was just lovely. I think we all only just had good experiences. That's why we bring out that game so often. Yeah,
and surprisingly, we have a couple of friends who are not at all into the comic book things, and they actively dislike most of the comic book heroes that are out there.
We gotta force them to go to cinema with us.
Kind of being uninspired, and they really enjoy this game just because it's something different. It's not a I'm not playing Captain America or the Hulk versus somebody else. That can go both ways. I can see someone who wants to play an actual comic book hero he knows from the comics. But I like that they...
But, you know, that friend that actively dislikes Marvel comics and is not very fond of other comics, other than that one surprise that we're not going to spoil... he said something which I can understand from the European point of view. The mainstream comic universes are set in the States, and when we actually played the last game, he said, "Oh, yay, we're not trying to save America, but the world." And I get it. That's a point of view where I say, okay, this is just nice. It's a different kind of superhero that is maybe internationally more likable. I don't want to judge because I don't feel that way, but I get why. So it just gives you an opportunity to get into the superhero thing without any kind of country or flag on there.
But don't be misled by that. It's the heroes in this game and the villains are very, very, very much like what you would find in a comic book, and lighthearted. It's not. This is not the Dark Knight kind of thing. There's some of the things are looking serious, but it's all. This is like the Saturday morning cartoon show equivalent of
from
comic
back in the
books.
day when we were young.
Very, very colorful. Not so much about. There's no decapitation going on, so it's not like the legendary Alien game. This is certainly a game you can play with kids. Whenever they figure out the counting kind of thing, but
or you count for them.
I think if you have a kid that is able to play something like Magic, you'll be perfectly fine with this. This is way simpler than.
Well, they have to be able to read and make their decisions, and then you can enjoy it. I mean, I don't know what it says. It says 8? Or no, it was under.
Probably under.
Let me lift.
See, it's also exercise.
Oh, 13 plus. It says 13 and up for 30 to 60 minutes.
That sounds, well,
sounds reasonable.
30 minutes doesn't sound as right, but yeah.
30 to 60, they said. Well, depending if you die fast, 30 minutes might be correct.
And we won't be going into every expansion, so
no,
just to give you a hint, what might most expansions introduce more heroes and more villains, and as I said earlier, the villains kind of define the gameplay in a major way by introducing the rules and the gameplay for how to beat them. However, there's some expansions that do some more different stuff, and obviously environments also in there. But there's something like the Vengeance set, which introduces a new way of fighting villains, where you are not fighting a single villain, but in that specific case, a group of 5. And
why? Because you can.
And they're all a little bit weaker, but it's like fighting the Sinister Six or having.
Mine was not weak. I can tell you that.
Well, they're weaker than their standalone equivalent.
Yeah, that's true.
I think there's the next expansion that's coming out is more leaning onto that and allowing more villains to be taken. That obviously you can't just grab whatever villain you have in the base box and put them together and now say, oh, now we're fighting 2 of them. That won't work, so they have to be at least a little bit tuned for that.
I'm saying the balancing thing. I think, or I wonder if with balancing the game when they playtested, they just took the Nemesis and balanced those and only kind of try to, but not really try to balance the others, because I mean, it's fine, but I think the Nemesis is pretty balanced of the whatever kind of pairing of villain and hero.
I'd say just from a gut feeling, to me it seems that the Nemesis stuff gets decided upfront, because it's very thematic. It's the Nemesis of Ra are those Egyptian gods
Anubis.
coming back. What they're called, the Ennead. Then there's so it feels like they took those archetypes of heroes and villains, and that's what the
but they play tested that pairing once they had the cards together and see if it was balanced. I think that could have happened, because that combination just feels balanced in comparison to any other.
Well, it's just deal 1 more damage and to both sides. So
yeah, but with the card decks as well, what they can do, they feel balanced. That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's so random to what comes.
Anyways, we're gonna talk a bit more Sentinels in the next video, which we're going to shoot in like 15 minutes. And once the coffee is in the cup again.
Lucky for you and for us, we don't have to go through all the gameplay stuff again. That's the point why we did this video.
Right, because the next one is just pretty much the extended version, but we want to make sure that you can choose on whatever you want to have.
And don't worry,
we
probably won't be talking about every mini expansion that comes out, but for Sentinels, it's very likely that we're going to be talking about the mid and big box expansions.
Yeah. So we'll see you later in the other video. You can expect it in like 15 minutes, 30 minutes once this is up. Because processing and stuff, you know.
Once this is up, I will have looked at my arm and determined that 15 minutes.
We don't play the shattered timeline now. Thank you very much for watching. See you in a few minutes. If you have any questions, any comments, let us know in the comment section below. And as always, share, like, if you haven't already, maybe subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video. Bye!